Welcome back, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the lunch hour and the ground bowls and bratwurst again. Thank you so much, Christina, for doing that for us. And hello, everyone on Zoom. Welcome back. Round of applause to Christina. So we're going to go ahead and begin our session 2, supporting mental health professionals through resilient self-care and community. And we have some brilliant panelist speakers here for our afternoon session. Natasha Santana-Viera, she is with Guitars Over Guns. She's the Director of Mental Health and Wellness. So, thank you. We have Pastor Linda Freeman, Executive Director at Peacemaker Family Center, Trinity Church in Miami Gardens. And Delphine Gervais, founder, thought partner, and therapist with Breakthrough Care and Resource Center, Inc. So we're very happy to have all of you. And our first speaker is Natasha, so come on up. The floor is yours.
Okay. All right. Hi, everyone. How are you? Hi. Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Yeah.
Okay. So welcome everyone. My name is Natasha. I'm the Director of Mental Health and Wellness for Guitars Over Guns. And if you were at the Florida Blue Symposium in April, this might be a little bit of a refresher, but I always think it's important to come back to our self-care and kind of reevaluate where we are. So today's presentation is going to be how to navigate burnout through self-care as care professionals. We're all doing this really hard work, and it's important that we also remember ourselves in the process. See the next slide. So, wanting to just ground in what is trauma and have like some shared language around what that is. So, trauma is the negative psychological impact of events and/or circumstances that are experienced as shocking or threatening or stressful and have an adverse effect on us. So we have an event that happens, we experience it in a particular way, and then it has an impact on us. It affects us in a particular way. We can either cope with it really well and manage that trauma, or we don't, and then it has those negative lasting impacts. So if we go to the next slide, there are 3 core elements of trauma. The first is that it was unexpected. The second one is that the person was unprepared. And lastly, we have that there was nothing that the person could do to stop it. So really shortly put, trauma is out of our control. And if we really think about it, that's why so many of our responses to trauma are to try to control our environment, the people around us, the situation we're in, because our brains are trying to find that stability and that control. So that it is, we're moving away from that uncertainty and that lack of control that comes with trauma. So I want to highlight a particular type of trauma. On the next slide, we have vicarious trauma. Vicarious trauma is the trauma that is experienced when we are supporting others who have gone or are going through something traumatic. So a lot of us in this room, I'm assuming, are care professionals or are working in fields where we are coming into contact with people who have experienced trauma. And whether or not our role is to help them through that trauma, even just holding space, listening to folks, trying to lend an empathetic ear, we are potentially experiencing that vicarious trauma. So there is a image on here, warning signs of trauma exposure. I'll just say a few. You don't have to raise your hand, but just take inventory and think to yourself, like, how many of us are maybe experiencing some of these symptoms? So we have feelings of helplessness, a sense that you can never do enough. We have apathy. There's minimizing our situations or our emotions. We might feel like an inability to empathize with people that we're caring for or that we're supporting. We also have things like anger, cynicism, irritability, chronic exhaustion, like I'm always tired. So I'm curious, if this resonates, right, how have you all thought about caring for yourself? Or is this the first time that you're even recognizing that you might even be experiencing this vicarious trauma. Looking at these symptoms, thinking about your experience. Is this resonating for anyone? Yeah, definitely. And what's important is that this is kind of silent, right? We don't necessarily recognize that what we're experiencing is that secondary trauma because we're so focused on the people that we're supporting, right? And so it could really go unnoticed in a lot of our lives. And some of these things are, oh, I'm just working too much, or oh, my job is hard, or oh, I have family at home, and so it's normal for me to be tired, or it's normal for me to get irritated, right? But that's not necessarily the case. And so it's really important for us to really take inventory of our lives and understand like what we're experiencing and how we might be able to actually take control a little bit and remedy some of these symptoms. So if we move on to the next slide, I also wanted to kind of ground us in the definition of burnout. I think that burnout has become a buzzword. I think a lot of us are talking about burnout. Oh, I'm burnt out, or this is making me burnt out. But I think it's a little bit deeper than just feeling tired or exhausted or not feeling like we can do what we normally have been able to handle, right? Burnout is really more connected to the macro level experience. And when we think about burnout, it's a physical or mental collapse caused by overwork or stress. It's also the state of mind that comes from ongoing or unresolved stress. And sometimes that stress does not even belong to us, right? It's that inherited stress that we get from the systems that we're a part of, the jobs that we occupy, the things that other people are dealing with and we're witnessing or supporting. And so some of those things can impact us on a really real way. We have social impact of burnout, which is callousness towards others or relationship issues, feeling alone and isolated. It could impact us physically, might make us more slowly to recover. It also can cause us more pain or worsen our sleep quality. We also have emotional symptoms of burnout, like cynicism or loss of idealism or just emotional exhaustion, little capacity for everyone else. And we also have mental impacts like poor focusing or our cognitive abilities minimize or decrease. And so, of course, existential and environmental impacts too, like reducing our sense of belonging, our sense of spiritual connection, feeling like nothing really matters, as well as our reduced ability to deal with high stress environments and situations. So all of that is really serious. And if you notice, it's like the entire self, right? Like it's not just one area where burnout impacts us. If we go to the next page. Some additional signs and symptoms of burnout are inability or becoming really cynical or negative, disruptive of sleep, like we said, feeling less engaged than normal and feeling disconnected from others, as well as our motivation levels start to drop. So if you in the past were like really motivated, really had a lot of energy to take care of yourself or do things that you knew were like healthy habits or things that helped you kind of keep up with yourself throughout the week and the month, experiencing burnout and really holding on to that vicarious trauma really limits our ability to do those things. So I know for myself, I've been in this profession, I've been in these roles where I'm having to think to myself, wait a minute, I used to be a lot better at like moving through all of this stuff. I used to be a lot better like taking care of myself and making sure that I felt good and well to be able to do this work. And for some reason, I couldn't pinpoint why it wasn't so easy anymore, why I couldn't handle the same amount of things that I've been handling before. And it's this chronic stress that we're experiencing. Like my therapist says, like, how long or how much more can you hold on to before you break, right? And so for some of us that are used to carrying a lot, used to holding on to a lot, and we find ourselves like questioning why it's not as easy as it used to be, these things just compound and compound and compound, and we get to our point where the old things that we used to cope with and how we used to manage our stress and our burnout just isn't working anymore. So we have to think about what else can we do to make sure that we are well. So Something else that I wanted to share in connection with burnout is this idea of exploitation. So when I say that burnout is more than just a single experience or a interpersonal experience, it really is about that macro level or that system level of conditions that make chronic stress a thing. We might be in roles or positions or jobs where the job could have been a lot easier if the systems at place were functioning better, right? My stress level may not be so high if we had more personnel, or if I wasn't doing the job with 3 people, or if my boss was not micromanaging me, or if there were unrealistic expectations in the workplace. So we really have to think about how our conditions are impacting our personal experience. And I just wanted to read this tweet, which I know now Twitter does not exist, it's like X or something. But this woman, Maggie, wrote this post and she said, "Why I prefer using the term exploitation over burnout. Burnout makes it about worker feelings. Exploitation draws our attention to employer practices and policies which require structural solution." And then she goes on to say, just to clarify, burnout and exploitation do not refer to the same thing. I just think that leading with exploitation, the problem, rather than the burnout or the symptoms that we experience, is a better way of framing the conversation about labor justice, right? And obviously her post is related to labor justice, but I think these ideas and these definitions hold true, that our burnout is a symptom of the conditions in which we're living, right? And so in our society, we love to really personalize problems and issues and say, like, if I was strong enough, if I was better at my job, if I had more rest, like all of this could be mediated. And to a certain extent, that applies, right? There are things that we can do at an individual level to manage our situation and our stress better. But ultimately, if the conditions are the conditions, there's not much we can do at an individual level until those things shift and change. And so would love for you all to kind of reflect on what are the systems that you're in and the spaces that you're occupying. What are those conditions that are contributing to this sense of burnout and overstress and overwork? And think about ways where you can maybe have a conversation with colleagues or a boss, or even just be able to take inventory for yourself so that you can separate your individual capacity from the system that you're occupying. So even if you're in a situation that structurally isn't going to change much, right? We can say, okay, well, I don't have to assume that this is a personal deficit on myself. I can recognize that I'm in this system that is creating this environment for me, and how can I adjust what I have control over? Because we may not have control over the system that we're in, right? And so demoralization is taking this idea a bit further, and it is a form of professional dissatisfaction that occurs when people encounter consistent and pervasive challenges to enacting the values that motivate their work. So again, this is going back to, I'm trying to make a change, but my employer prevents me from making this an easier experience for me. Or I'm trying to create this individual change with a client, but the Social Security office as a system, right, is really creating conditions that are preventing me from being able to be successful. And so thinking about that consistent and repetitive stress of going up against a system that is not working in your favor really contributes to this idea of burnout and ultimately demoralization, where it could change, like things could be different and we do not have to assume all this stress or carry this workload, but because the system is not willing to change, and we are in a position where we have to kind of manage ourselves and the people that we care for to be able to navigate through that. So it characterizes the problem as a value conflict experienced as a result of policies, mandates, and school practices. This definition came from Doris Santoro from Fighting Educator Burnout. So this example is specific to education, but we can really apply this idea to all of the different industries that we are a part of. Any questions so far? I know we've been kind of just zooming through.
We'll have a few minutes at the end.
Great. So really wanted to center us on this quote by Audre Lorde, who is an incredible freedom fighter and writer. And they said that caring for myself is not self-indulgence, it is self-preservation. And that is an act of political warfare. Does anyone want to share their reactions or responses to this quote? Maybe about how it relates to your personal experience with kind of self-care. Either one of you.
I was just gonna say that saying that it's a political warfare is very important because on a day-to-day basis, our jobs, the society and all that stuff, they don't really prioritize us. And so the act of doing that and prioritizing yourself and your well-being is going against that.
Yeah,
And you have to do it or else someone's gonna do it for you.
right. Did you have anything to add?
I was gonna say that, at least for me growing up, like anything that's self-care was seen as like you're being selfish.
Mm-hmm.
And so I, as an adult, I come into obviously trying to challenge that narrative that I grew up with. And so seeing that, I kind of like thought that, like, oh my gosh, what would my mom or my family say reading this? But,
Yeah.
but I completely agree.
Yeah. Anyone else? Thank you for sharing.
I can even add even what this woman said here right now, gender, being a woman, on top of that, culture, Latin, on top of that is where that comes from.
Yeah.
Meaning that we can't be self-indulgent.
Exactly. And I think a lot of us grew up with this idea that self-care is selfish, right? And that it is even a luxury, right? Or that it is for a certain group of people and not for other groups of people. And Audre Lorde is challenging that. I'm challenging that, right? I think that we are learning that rest is not something that you earn. It is something that physiologically our bodies absolutely require in order to function properly. And so we are in, again, a system, this, let's say capitalism, that pushes this idea that the more we produce, the more we can execute, the more output we have, the more valuable we are. And then in turn, the more we get to earn our rest, we get to earn our vacation, we get to earn sleeping in on a Saturday, right? And that's just not sustainable. And it's not actually how our bodies physically work. We need sleep, we need rest, we need moments where we are able to kind of shut down and not focus on anything else, but what we need, what our body needs, what our mind needs, what our spirit needs. And so I'm really going to encourage us to do that today. We move to the next slide. Healing through self-care and wellness. I do want to make a point that self-care isn't always luxurious. It isn't always a spa day or something that has to cost a lot of money. And so I'm curious, what are some ways that you all already take care of yourself or practice self-care? Yes.
Taking the time to actually wash my face.
Yeah.
And I put the lotion on and brush my teeth without having a distraction.
Yes. Dental hygiene and skincare. Love that. Who else?
One of our Zoom attendees says, I tend to my house plants.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Caring for our plants
And the
that
beach.
brings joy.
Connecting with loved ones.
Yeah.
Conversation.
Being around those that we care about, loved ones. What else? How else do we take care of ourselves and prioritize our care? Yes, in the back. Go ahead. You first. Oh, yeah.
I like going for walks
Yeah.
and doing little 5K runs with my son.
Yeah.
Bringing things to the fold. And I got into these sappy Hallmark movies lately. You know, just to bring a smile on my face, because I'm so much into the psychological thrillers and then, that just compounds all the other stuff that we deal with on a day-to-day basis. So lately, I guess maybe it's the holiday season, I've been kind of gravitating to the sappy Hallmark movies now.
Yeah, feel good content. I love that.
I was gonna say walking as well, but I also pray. And I listen to podcasts, things that I enjoy. And I make sure I schedule my self-care on my Google Calendar.
Oh,
I
excellent.
actually put it there and I stick to that.
That's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
As someone who lives and dies by my calendar, I also try to put myself here on my calendar. But I'm not as good as this woman here, because I definitely ignore the reminder. Like, you want, right? Anyone else?
We have some from Zoom.
Yeah.
So some of our Zoom attendees say things like, going to the beach, taking a candlelight bath, getting you makeup, crafts with their son, watching movies, cartoons for their childhood experience, meditation, things like that, and listening to music and dancing.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yes. Great examples. If we can move to the next slide. Wellness activities, I really like to talk about in like a multi-pronged approach, right? And a lot of you all said different things that hit on a lot of these categories, right? We want to think about how we're connecting to our spirit, whether it's spiritual or religious practices, whether it's guided meditation, sound bath, breathing exercises. How are we connecting to the spirit and sometimes, and not sometimes, but something larger than ourselves, right? Affirmations and other things like positive words of, like reinforcement for ourselves can be very encouraging to our spirit as well. Activating the mind, whether it's journaling or writing, being able to read audiobooks, even listening to that, listening to music or podcasts that really help us, as well as planning or even having a therapy session. And then, of course, connecting to the body, activating our senses, smelling a candle, going for a walk, stretching, even taking a nice hot bath or a cold bath, if that's something that works for you, being able to just engage your five senses. We can move to the next one. Getting enough sleep is also really important. And connecting with loved ones, some of these things that we've already said. I want to ask, like, what are some things that we do to take care of ourselves that don't necessarily feel so fun or so glamorous? You're back. Therapy, yes, that's big on my list. My therapy sessions are not always fun. They're emotional, they're difficult, they're challenging, they're pushing us to grow. What else? Going to sleep early in the back. Exercising, yep.
Actually going to the doctor for your checkups.
Yeah, what about even just scheduling the appointment?
Yeah, for real.
But yeah, keeping up with our physical, mental health. Anyone else?
Crying.
Crying.
I like to do a to-do list.
A to-do list and the satisfaction of being able to cross something off. Sometimes I have a to-do list and then I don't do anything on that list, but I do a bunch of other things. Best believe I write them on the list and then I scratch them off. Let's move to the next slide. So something that I want to encourage you all to do, I don't think we have enough time to take 5 minutes to do it today, but take a screenshot or just to jot this table down in your notes or even in the slide deck and think about some goals like related to your wellness that would be important for you in order to prioritize your rest or take care of things. In another session that I did one time, a woman was like, oh, I need to actually put together my will, or I need to help my parents go to an important doctor's appointment or whatever it is, or I need to sort my finances, right? Some of those things that are not so fun or so glamorous, but could really help us mentally or emotionally because we've accomplished something that is in service of ourselves is really important. So being able to think about what are some physical goals, some mental goals, some spiritual goals, some financial and some work and life balance goals that would help you feel like you're taking care of yourself in a better way. Think about specific action steps that are required to complete those goals and give yourself a timeline as well, because a lot of us can jot down the list, but it's difficult for us to take a step. And so the more detailed we can be and the more thoughtful we are about the goals that we have for our wellness, the more likely we are to accomplish them. And next slide. So just some reflection. How does burnout show up for you? What physical, mental, emotional, or spiritual symptoms do you experience? And how do you care for yourself? What has made the greatest impact in your healing? Some of us have already answered the second question, but if there's anyone else that cares to reflect out loud to either of these questions, I encourage that. If not, just kind of take inventory for yourself. Maybe answer them quietly and kind of reflect on how these things show up and what changes you can make in your life to feel more balanced. And then just some last takeaways before I wrap up. Vicarious trauma impacts care professionals in a very significant way. And so it could definitely have a negative impact on our mental health. So taking time to nurture ourselves is very critical for our well-being. And it's hard to take care of others that are close to us if we are not well ourselves. Like, we always learn we have to put on our mask before we can assist those around us on an airplane in case there's a crash, right? And so the same thing applies to us in our personal lives. And then lastly, self-care is more than taking care of your body. It's taking care of your mind, your spirit, and every other part of yourself. And lastly, thank you for participating. My email and my phone number are on the slide, and I appreciate your time. Are we doing Q&A now?
After.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Hey, it's working. Good afternoon, everyone. How are you?
Good afternoon.
Thank you, Natasha. That was really great. Such a quiet lunch. My name is Linda Freeman, and I am the Executive Director of the Peacemaker Family Center at Trinity Church. I'm also an environmental engineer and a National Geographic explorer. And my topic for National Geographic is STEM education for middle and high school students. So I wear lots of different hats. And so today I'm wearing my pastor hat, so I'm speaking from that area. But what I can tell you is that let me give you some of my resilience credits. How about that? Because we're talking about resilience. So here's one. I have been married to my husband, David, for 38 years. I have worked at Trinity Church and had the same boss for 24 years. I get another badge for that.
Yes, you do.
And so I'm speaking from real life. When I'm talking about resilience, I'm talking from real things. Family, co-workers, supervising employees, having people in our church and hearing all of their struggle and working with them. So I'm speaking to you from a place of lots of years, being a human being, living with lots of stress. Vicarious, what did you say? Vicarious trauma. And I just want to share with you my first slide says, my body, my friend. And I want to encourage you to consider your body, your best friend. Because no matter what is happening around you or in you, what's with you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week is your body. And so as I listened to the speakers this morning and to Natasha and heard some of the comments that you all were making, what I recognize, and I do it myself, is that as a caregiver, we carry loads. We carry baggage, sometimes our own baggage, but then we pick up other people's loads and we carry them. And as a pastor, I know that sometimes people are happy to give me their load, right? They'll say, well, blah, 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 here, boom, help me. Now, whether or not that person is willing to take the steps that they need to take to help themselves, they are happy to give me the load. So what I want to encourage you with this afternoon is to put other people's loads down. You're not responsible
to carry other people's loads. And as we heard about burnout, exploitation can come from people we love, not just our employer. We heard about family exploitation, where people are imposing what they believe on us maybe. And so we're carrying things. So I just want to say, I have one thing I haven't heard said today, so I'll just say, put it down. Put other people's burdens down. You're not responsible. Next slide. When you look at this picture, how does it make you feel, or what does it invoke in you?
Anxious.
Exhaustion,
Fast-paced.
fast-paced,
Agitated.
agitated.
No time.
Ooh, no time. People are in my way too, and look, I've got someplace to go. And that could be you right now. I know earlier this week, I had a really big shock. Acquaintance, a ministry acquaintance, found out that her husband, who was also in ministry, took his life last week. Well, something was going on that he kept to himself. He was a caregiver. He held it all together. None of us can figure out what it was. But he's gone. So that agitation, that anxiety, that stress, that carrying the load from everyone else, something, he said, I can't do it anymore. So he's no longer with us. So again, it's okay. Put the loads down. Next slide. Okay, so when you look at this, what does this invoke? Friendship. Friendship,
Wholesome.
wholesome,
Happiness.
happiness, sisterhood, support,
Connection.
connection. Say that again.
Genuine.
Genuine.
Love for life.
Love for life.
Goes to the water.
Okay, being at the water, being
Enjoying
outside,
nature.
enjoying nature, having a good time.
Yeah.
These moments that we can have in our own life are our choice. It's our choice. It's our choice. And I know as a caregiver, sometimes, as Natasha mentioned, sometimes by the end of the day, I talk to so many people, I don't even want to talk. I'm done. I have no words left. Okay, or I might have words that I prefer not to use. Maybe I don't want anybody to hear those words that I'm really thinking on the inside. But this photo, what this is saying is that if I have somebody, one or two people, even one person in my life that I can have this experience with, brings healing, brings joy, sisterhood, all those words that, all those good things that we just heard. But it's my choice to do that. And again, I can't do that if I'm carrying too much of other people's burden. So next slide. So this definition of resilience, it says that it's the ability to bounce back, adapt, and recover from challenges, setbacks, or adversity. It's the capacity to withstand and navigate through difficult or stressful situations and to maintain a sense of well-being and positive functioning in the face of adversity. Next slide. And as I was talking about this earlier, a couple seconds ago, that for me, I have done this myself. Live in my head. And I treat my body like it's a vehicle. So when I wake up in the morning, I kind of get in my head and I drive my body everywhere to get all the things done. But I don't really think about it. It's kind of like Say that again. I'm on autopilot. I put my vehicle on autopilot. Maybe I really need a new set of tires, but I don't have time for that because I'm just driving. I got places to go. And I don't recognize in that moment that it's not a car or a truck. I can't trade it in. I didn't lease it. Every 3 years, I don't get a new one. I only get one. So if I cannot connect with my own body and appreciate the body that I have, I may succumb to many of these other things Dr. McIntosh was talking about this morning. All of those stress-related diseases and conditions because I'm driving my own self into the ground. Okay? And I'm suggesting through mindfulness-based practices, I can learn how to accept and recognize that my body is my very best friend. And that my life would be, I can improve my own life by coming to terms with my own body, by connecting my body, my thoughts together so that I operate as one unit. Does that make any sense?
Yes.
So all the pieces and parts of who I am are working together in a positive way. And how can I do that? Well, I'm going to give you a couple of thoughts, ideas. And we talked about some of those earlier in this conference, but I'm going to give you a couple. One is rest. And somebody was talking about luxury, self-care as luxury. Well, you know what? It's okay to be a little bougie with yourself. It's okay. So rest is one thing that you can do that you are in control of that will increase the quality of your life. So in South Florida, I was not born in South Florida. So when we moved here 20 some years ago, I found out about Cuban coffee. I didn't know anything about it, never heard of it, didn't know. But I drank that cup in that little tiny cup. I think I'll be awake for about 3 days. And what I learned in South Florida, if you get tired, just have that little, okay? And it's great. Yeah, it's great. But guess what? When I do that, what am I telling my body?
To keep going.
I don't care about the signals that you just sent me. Override. Yeah, override. And I don't have time for that. So I'm gonna, and I'm gonna keep it moving. But at some point, your body will override you. Right, so we heard from Dr. McIntosh, all these different things that can happen to our body. What is that about? That's your body telling you, you don't stop, I will stop you. I will show you who's really in charge of this situation. You're not going any farther. Okay, so rest, eat is the second one I want to mention. There's so much information available now about nutrition and how we can increase our quality of life by what we eat, by what we put in our mouth, what we ingest, that we can make an intentional choice what we choose to put in our mouths, because that's what's nourishing our organs. That's what's helping us have our brain is going to function better. And again, this is our own choice, right? We get to choose. So eating and resting. The third one is moving, that every day as you're able, move your body. Move your body. Find something that you enjoy. Whether it's walking, you heard about running the 5K, somebody mentioned, I enjoy, I practice yoga and Qigong. Have you heard of Qigong? It's a relative of Tai Chi. In yoga, they're all relatives, cousins. And finding some way to move your body that you actually enjoy. Because if you get involved, like this is something I would not find enjoyable, and that is, what's that called where you go, they call it the box.
Pickleball.
I wouldn't enjoy that. I wouldn't enjoy CrossFit. Okay, so it doesn't make sense for me to sign up for CrossFit when I already know somebody yelling in my face, do more, jump higher. Or I'm gonna rebel.
Yeah.
So I'm not signing up for CrossFit, but I enjoy Qigong because it combines breathing and mindfulness and movement. And that is something that when I wake up in the morning and I think about it, okay, it's time to do some Qigong, I feel happy. So my suggestion, when you select something, an exercise program to move your body, choose something that when you think about it, it gives you joy. And don't do it because your neighbor does this, or your cousin does that, or your sister runs marathons. If you don't enjoy it, the moment it rains or something happens, you go, I'm not doing that. Okay, you have a reason, because you never liked it in the first place.
Yeah, right. Yep.
And then the fourth thing I want to mention is just pausing. It is really nice sometimes for me to sit in absolute quiet. No music, no television, no agenda, just to sit and be quiet and get to know myself better. If you've never tried that before, like just a plain, no frills, silent meditation, try it. It might be frightening at first because my experience and working with others in mindfulness practices, that the thoughts that may begin to arise may be a little bit alarming. Okay, your fears, your anxieties, things that you worry about may start to come up first. But here's an idea. It's just a thought. So as you're sitting quietly and a thought goes by and it's stressing you out, or just think of it as a thought, like a cloud. It's gonna flow by. And you can just observe it and say, okay, yeah, and just let it float on by. But as you increase your instances of taking time for a quiet moment just with yourself, you may find that you get to know yourself better. And as you're there quietly and you're thinking those thoughts, or you even have the emotions to go along with them, you might feel those emotions in different parts of your body, but to let that pass by. And I found that to be such a valuable use of my time. Maybe it's for 5 minutes. I did that this morning when I got up, made a cup of coffee, and I just sat quietly and just let the thoughts go by. And reminding myself that the only person that I'm really responsible for is me. And I'm worth a little luxury, okay? Can I just say, I'm worth the rest. I'm worth the self-care. Because I get to be with me 24 hours a day. I'm my best friend. And as I can cultivate that in my own self, when I go to interact with other people as a caregiver, I'm able to interact with them in a more peaceful way, in a more balanced way. I'm not pulling in their emotions, and I'm also not pushing my emotions out on them. Okay? And here, let's go to the, oh yeah, okay, so here's I brought a picture, and in this picture, you're gonna notice there's the tallest tree in there. And I don't know if you can see it from where you're sitting. Let me see, can I walk over here?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
If you notice here on this tree, Okay, it's nice and straight. What do you see when you get about here?
It runs.
Okay, that is the sign that this tree has been through trauma. Okay, something happened during those years. That tree, something really terrible happened, but it hung on. And it kept it together and it kept growing. So this tree is at least 50 years old. It's had a trauma, but it's been resilient. And it's still alive, and it's in North Carolina, a place that I go often. And I love that tree. Because when I look at that tree, I say, wow, okay, you made it. I can make it. But also, if you find, there's tons of trees here in South Florida. If you befriend a tree, you find a tree that you like, you might not know this, so I'm gonna share this with you. That trees create a chemical called a phytoncide. A phytoncide is something that they naturally make, and it's an antibiotic for the tree, and it's also a pest or repellent for pests. And they will create this phytoncide and release it as a way of self-care for them, and also to repel bugs that might damage them. But when you stand by a tree and you are breathing in phytoncides, and phytoncides are good for humans. Did you know that? So if you go outside and walk around, I don't know if you've ever experienced this at all, but if you walk in a forest, for me anyway, I always feel better. Right? I'm just walking in the trees, I'm breathing in, and we're exchanging. I'm exhaling carbon dioxide. They're taking that in and giving me back some oxygen. And they're also sharing their phytoncides with me. So it's free. If you just stand by a tree, you can just say, thank you. Okay, we're gonna stand here and have an exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide, and I'm gonna breathe in some of this phytoncide. It is actually good for you. Okay, so that's something you can do, that's totally free. There you go, okay? But trees are so important to us in ways that maybe you didn't know, but now you know. So go out and find a tree. I have a minute left. And finally, we did some breath work earlier today with Christina. And I would encourage you to look into more different types of breath work. I put them here on the screen, but we won't do them. But let me just encourage you. Your body is your very best friend. Someone who's with you 24/7, year round. And as you love your body, take care of your body, connect with your body, you can increase your quality of life. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So how many of us remember Fridays, that last teacher of the day? That's what I feel like right now. We've had lunch and everyone's looking forward to the grown-up happy hour and to move on with life. So I promise you that I will head up as soon as the bell rings, wherever that bell is. Gentlemen, will you all be ringing the bell? Please ring the bell. My name is Delphine Gervais. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and talking about burnout and compassion fatigue and all that stuff. I am a group practice owner at Breakthrough Care and Resource Center. This year, I also took on the role of being the president of the Center for Equitable Access and Treatment of Trauma.
Wow.
And I'll talk about another nonprofit. So I wear multiple hats, as Pastor Freeman said. But today, part of what we've been getting has been speaking to me as ongoing reminders. Now, I do recognize that online as well as in person. Not everybody here is a mental health professional. So can I get an idea of who's in the space? You know, I met some people that work in government.
You're a licensed mental health counselor?
Yes,
What-
mental health clinician, awesome. With what department?
With the fire department.
Fire, oh my God, you guys are like.
I
Yeah,
wear multiple hats.
yeah, see? So I love it. Anyone else, please?
Substance use prevention.
Substance use prevention.
On Zoom, we have a social work, nursing professor, DCF, academia.
Love it. We've got that mixed in our virtual world. Anyone else? Any finance people in here? Y'all should be in here too. You strapped too, right? They should be here too. So the title of my presentation is Who's Helping the Helpers? And you'll hear there, definitely, we didn't know each other. Presentations, so we know that as I'm hearing everyone else's stuff, it makes sense. It all makes sense. So we are reiterating who's helping the helpers and becoming experts of our own selves. Because Mr. Rogers' mom, you remember watching Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood? There's a beautiful quote that says that when he was afraid, his mom would tell him, whenever you're afraid, look for the helpers.
Yeah.
But guess what, y'all? Who's helping to help us? Who's looking out for us? The data says, and this is for the psychologists, right? That sense of overwhelmingness. In 2020, 30%. In 2021, it jumped to 41%. And last year, 46%, with half of them reporting that they were experiencing burnout. Now, we already understand that burnout is a symptom of a larger issue, a systemic issue, as my sister talked about, exploitation, because I won't feel burnout if the system led me to believe that I could come into a space, be who I needed to be, and go home and be who I need to be on the other side of life. And so understanding that, you know, when Pastor Freeman came up here and she talked about resilience in terms of being married for how many years? 30 something?
38.
38 years. So I've been married 25, right? And I would have felt some type of way because resilience is a relative experience. It should be. We have at least 3 generations in the workforce right now. How many of y'all are already working with the Gen Zers? Fun times, huh? Fun times with our Gen Zers. They are teaching me so much about myself. 3 generations and 3 perspectives on what it is to experience resiliency. My 17-year-old niece, resiliency for her is trying to figure out how to cook an Instapot dinner that I've asked her to do this weekend and be at her, what do they call this end of the year, the homecoming. Like she's stressed out. So I'm building resilience in her through just figuring out those 2 things. But resilience for us, the big people, is about leaving here, going home, figuring out all the things that life is bringing us, right? We heard so much, pivot and switch. 2020 pandemic, we got to pivot and switch. We got to be able to bounce back. But dare I say, to the next screen, that resilience could be a misdirected ideal. Did we get bamboozled?
Yeah.
I think so. We got bamboozled somewhere along the way. I don't know if it was my cultural background. I don't know what was taught about my gender. I don't know if it was my societal expectations or any of the intersectionalities that bring us all here today. I don't know where. But one day I woke up and thought that resilience means that even as a work from home person, that I had to push through 10-hour days. I work from home. No one is regulating my time, but there's that internal conversation, like I shouldn't go on my patio for 30 minutes because that makes me a bad clinician. I should be doing some more research. I got the nonprofit stuff going on over here. I am a bad person for wanting to watch 24, Jack Bauer. just half an hour, like, where's that internal conversation coming from? A misdirected ideal. It brings on this judgment, most of it from self. It does start out with places of origin and other spaces, but then it ends up being a self thing, because mom not there, dad not there, friends not there. It's just us and ourselves. And Pastor Freeman said to be comfortable in being with ourselves. But many of us aren't, because we have all of those competing conversations in our head. We could be doing more, right? And I'm gonna tell you, burnout, like my sister said, all of those nice fancy words, you know what burnout is? Doing too much. We doing too much. Nobody asked, but we're doing way too much. For whatever reason, I know my issues because I'm in therapy for 'em. I got this older sibling, Haitian daughter, middle child, depending on the parents, syndrome going on. So I go to therapy to learn how to create those healthy boundaries. And as clinicians, as first responders, as the people wearing multiple hats, resilience is overrated. And it could look different for different people. Next slide. All right. Compassion, a weaponized virtue. In our country, in our culture, compassion is expected. But with mental health professionals, it's as if we can't put it down. How dare I pass an accident and keep going? That makes me a horrible person. It's how dare you not be compassionate right now? How dare you, Delphine, say, okay, it's 5 o'clock, that's it, I'm not speaking to another soul until I choose to. How dare you tell your client that, no, I'm booked for the week, I have no more. How dare you say, no, I don't meet on weekends, or these are my days. I struggled in my earlier days of solo practice because I came from systems where people was always telling me, turn left, turn right, go up, go down. And that carried into private practice, where I had to force myself to realize I couldn't save the world. Going back to the memes that you talked about putting it down, I immediately thought, and it's above me now. So that's gonna be my mantra. It's above me now. Not only am I putting it down, but I'm remembering that it's above me now. Compassion fatigue is a real thing. It's a real thing in our profession, first responders, mental health professionals. I have to tell you, those who are the nursing people, no shade, but I didn't see too many of them going to therapy during the pandemic. What is that about? Where are we being told that we are the last ones to get in to get the help that we need, when we should be the first ones running in? If you know of a mental health professional, a first responder, someone in the clergy field, any of these helping professionals, ask them, what have you been doing to take care of yourself? Next slide. So this is how I knew we were on the same, that's right, because Audre Lorde, she's already said it. This is not self-indulgence. This is radical self-preservation. We are out here fighting for our souls, our lives, so we could go back out here and do the work. Fun fact, how many of you guys know who was the first to talk about self-care as an organization or a group of people? Fun fact, and it wasn't the medical community. The Black Panther Party. Look it up, Google it. Self-care was necessary for the work. You had to fall back in order to proceed. You had to pause in order to go back and fight the systems. Black Panther Party. Now, the medical community conceptualized it and made it look all fancy, and they tagged on all these other things to lead us to believe we got to spend money for self-care now. So there's a whole scam going on now. Got us thinking that if I didn't get my nails done, then that wasn't self-care. I was telling my colleague the other day, she was like, girl, you doing too much. And I was like, yeah, but, and I was literally whispering to you, I legit, it was just 2 of us on the Zoom, I was like, but I went and I took a nap for an hour and a half and it felt good. Why am I still with him? I'm a grown person who works hard. I own a business. I'm a president. I have to remind myself of all of these things to say, I deserve an hour and a half of sleep. Remember that for yourself. Next slide. This lovely face that you see in front of you, Cinnamon Key, a colleague in our profession, is no longer with us. Yes. She was one of the reasons why my colleague and I created yet another nonprofit called Just Be the Breakthrough. Because in recognizing that we, as clinicians, we look to the left and to the right, there was nobody coming to save us. When we were in the process of doing something during the pandemic called I've Got 5 on it, where we recruited clinicians to give tips, and it was about 5 of us, and we all did a video because no one was and we couldn't go anywhere, and therapy wasn't what it was now. Cinnamon was part of the group that said, I'm with it, I'm doing it. She fell ill, and Belinda and I, community that we were in, was like, we need to send her some things to make her feel better. Let's Instacart. From what I gathered, those things made it there, but by that time, Cinnamon was hospitalized. And she left us about 2 days later. When I say that was one of the that light switch went off for me as a professional, as a human being. And it was the beginning of a story of something different in our community. To recognize we have to lean in on each other. The systems are not here for us, and we can rail against them till kingdom come. It is what it is. But we create community how we can dictate it to be. Next slide. And so community looked like contacting her clients. One of the most difficult things I've ever had to do around telling someone their therapist had passed, and collaborating with other colleagues to do this, to be able to make sure that even now, as every year, we remember her name through events, through sponsorships of activities that she enjoyed doing with young girls. When people ask me after 20-something years, how do you do it? Why are you still in this game? Why are you still picking stuff up? A couple of things I've realized. Community has helped. My colleagues, during the pandemic when we couldn't figure things out, being in each other's chats, encouraging each other, and recognizing that through our generational differences, my mentors were able to speak into me, validated. It's important for us to recognize one colleague to the next, I don't have all the answers. I wasn't meant to have all the answers. This thing about, well, I've been in the game for 20-something years, I should act like I know everything. Just kill it. My colleague sitting next to Connie and enjoying hearing her new journey in this field, that's what it's all about. Encouraging people along in the journey, because my journey as a clinician isn't the journey of another person. Community is important, making sure that I'm in a place where people are celebrating your win. Connie is studying for the exam. She has found her community. I have studied for exams. I found my community. I started a practice, and my girlfriend will be there at night showing me how to write the CMS 1500 form for all of us who know, like legit, like walking me through. Find your community. And I leave you all with that. Thank you all so very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Again, just a wealth of information from each of you. And just really kind of challenging us to go deeper into getting to know ourselves and to addressing some of those, some of our own personal barriers, right? That we need to kind of focus on as well. We need to be better. So I took a lot from that. I hope that you all also took a lot from those presentations. We are going to take some time to address any questions from the audience and on Zoom as well. So does anyone have any questions for any of the speakers? No? Anybody on Zoom?
They're just
Not
saying
yet.
thank you.
Yes.
I'll be that proverbial guy pretty much at the end. It's like, okay, why are you asking a question? Everybody wants to leave and all that. You get that analogy and all that. I want to thank the three presenters. I mean, everything was awesome. I think I'm leaving with like 10 pages of notes. So again, I really appreciate it. You talked about burnout, compassion, fatigue. You talked about a lot of different things. Another thing that has popped up like in the last 5 years, seeing a lot in the military and now starting to transfer over, is a concept of moral injury. Maybe you're familiar with moral injury. Could you speak a little bit about that concept of moral injury and how are you seeing it play itself out in the counseling field? I saw some of that in the nursing field, in the medical field, making difficult decisions, moral decisions on who lives and who dies in the line. So I saw that putting on my paramedic hat, because I wear multiple hats as well. So can you speak a little about moral injury and how is that affecting the world of mental health that we're talking about today? Thank you.
That's a good one. So I know in the work with first responders, there's always that the sense of it's either black or white, right? And the way we cognitively think through things typically is, well, it's either right or wrong, or it's either good or bad. And very few of us get comfortable in exploring the grays. So I spend a lot of time with people exploring the grays, because when we talk about cognitive restructuring, we have to realize it's not about just filtering for the negative stuff. What about any of the experiences that we're going through? Can we glean some positive things? But definitely getting comfortable in the gray areas, because since 2020, y'all, it's a lot of grays. This month alone in October has shown us there are a lot of gray areas in a lot of issues that we have to get comfortable in. So I hope I answered it. Yeah.
We have a question on Zoom as well.
Can I just add something before we?
Yes,
move to the
of
next
course.
question? The other thing I wanted to say is that like binary thinking is also a trauma response. So understanding that like our desire to categorize something as black or right or wrong or right is also part of that trauma response. And so being able to get comfortable in that gray is a way to kind of heal from that trauma that was a precursor for that type of thinking, especially when it comes to the morality.
Thank
Okay. On Zoom, someone's asking, could you speak on the effects on TikTok on mental health and college age and the influence it has on us?
I know, right? Wow. So remember Gen Zers, whenever I talk again, bring up my 17-year-old niece, I could speak till I'm blue in the face, but it's TikTok. TikTok is where she gets the answers from. So we have to recognize that for my generation, it was the encyclopedia. For the next generation, it was the World Wide Web, and now we have TikTok and all the other things. We have to be able to first respect and meet people where they are and how they are receiving information. And then we're able to then explore whether this information is based on facts, whether it's based on biases, whether it's just based on how somebody felt they were gonna present a thing. So I knew my mentors, they were well-meaning, but there were a lot of things that got canceled before I could even express myself about certain things. And I knew that as a Gen Xer, getting caught in between multiple generations that I had to do a better job of making sure that I created space for my colleagues as they're exploring different things themselves. I also think like it's not going away, and something that as a millennial I feel grateful for is like being a part of those two worlds, like being a part of the world that we didn't have smartphones and encyclopedias were our friend, but also being able to enjoy the connection and like the vast information that the internet and apps provide. But I think something that is missing that I really try to push in our youth programming is education and being able to set boundaries. So a lot of our young people who have grown up in this massive technology world, like don't understand digital safety. I know Kristi does a great training on digital safety for young people, like understanding that once you put something out into the world, it's there. You don't own your content that you put onto the internet, and being able to equip our young people or people in general with just that knowledge and helping them set boundaries, because I think it can be a wonderful tool, but it's that very fine line between I can feel connected on social media and I just spend 3 hours doom scrolling and it like really negatively affects my health. And so helping ourselves, but also our young people understand how to create healthy boundaries around digital media and our use of it, how to fact check and understand that not everything that is on the internet is truth, and being able to just educate and set those boundaries and help our young people open their eyes to that, because it's just normal for them.
I'd just like to add about social media that there's always somebody who appears to be more beautiful than us, wealthier than us, smarter, cooler, and immersing ourselves too much in social media, I think is negative, because it can invoke, I'm not enough, this feeling I'm not enough, and how am I gonna get there? Many of the young people that we work with in our different programs they'll say things like, well, I wanna be a social media influencer when I grow up. Okay. And why is that? Well, because they have a lot of money and they have this and they have that. And it can be difficult, like you were saying, to divide that fact from fiction in a young person's mind, but also for adults too. To say that, hey, how come I'm not that, or I don't have that? So it's a struggle we all need to work with, I believe. And it's not going away. It's not going.
We do have one more question. It's for Delphine. You talk about the importance of your mental health community. How do you suggest going about building that community?
So unfortunately, there's gonna be some trial and errors. Let's talk about it. Not everybody is for you, and you are not for everybody. I think it's shared values. I think it's recognizing the bigger picture of this journey that we're on. But there will be some trial and errors, and there would be, if you live long enough, where in this season, this person that wasn't necessarily part of your journey, but you come back around and it was like, oh, you make sense right now. You didn't make sense when I was working in the school system for 10 years. A lot of people didn't make sense to me then because I was in that world. They didn't make sense when I was an early Head Start social worker, because then that was a whole other world. But there are way more people making sense to me in this season of my life that includes those others along the way. So I don't know if that answered the question, but I think sometimes we spend a lot of time like, can you be my friend? Can you be my colleague? Like, we're not in middle school anymore. Being comfortable in who you are is what leads you to say, oh, well, I'm coming into this is not middle school. I'm not gonna walk in and hope to be sitting at someone's table. I'm gonna sit at this table, and whoever's gonna come along this journey with me, that's who's rocking with me.
Thank you so much. Anyone have a question? Yes.
Hi, everyone. I'm not a clinician, but I do deal with individuals who've experienced trauma in the workplace. And being an investigator for 20 years, we have a lot of that information, and that trauma was transferred onto us. What are some tips that you can provide for employers to cultivate a work environment where they emphasize or put a priority on employees' mental health and being able to be resilient to minimize the negative impact of absorbing that information and trauma that we deal with on a day-to-day basis? In case a lawsuit is not good enough for you, as a encouragement, I think it's remembering you want productive people in your place of employment. Productive people are people who are content, people who are happy, people who feel valued. The whole way of doing work has shifted in the last 3 years alone. I came out of a system where I was not necessarily valued. I was respected maybe, but not valued. And so I understood that valuing people and meeting people where they were. If there is a Zoom and there's a young mom with her toddlers in the background, we gotta meet people where they are. If moms have been in, we had our birth justice conversation earlier today. Employers have to understand we are whole human beings out in someone's home, in someone's community. We're something somewhere else. So space of empathy, recognizing these are real human beings that are coming into the workforce. And they're coming with problems specifically in the last 3 years. Are people reading the information about mental health? Are the HR reps actually going out and bringing in clinicians to speak and having these types of forums and attending them themselves? Are you actually understanding what's going on? Because you lose dollars when people aren't happy. People can go to work for Target, y'all, and make good money and not have to deal with a pension job in this day and age. They are not interested in pensions and retirement and 401ks if they are not happy. I can't convince a millennial to stay in a job if she's not. My clinicians, who are mostly millennials, they out here writing books. They're traveling, they're doing the whole 9 yards. And me, Gen Xer, who was like, I can't move to the left or the right, I want the best for them. Why? Because then they bring the best of themselves to the work with the clients. Yeah, I would say employers also need to think about like what they need and understand that what they need is what we all need. I feel grateful to work at an organization that does prioritize wellness. And I think even structurally, something like in our meetings, we have a personal and a professional update. So just like this message of like, I care about what's going on past what you're responsible for in your role. Being able to have a hybrid model if you're able to do that. Like when one of us is sick, our admin person sends us an Uber Eats like chicken noodle soup or a bagel or like a treat. And it's often unexpected. Like I said, oh, I'm not feeling well on a Zoom call meeting, and in 30 minutes, something was delivered to my door, right? And I think it can be about small gestures as well that let your employees know that you care about them beyond what they're responsible for producing at work, and creating opportunities to engage outside of the office for fun. Like we have our team days, or like our Miami programs team went axe throwing a few weeks ago, or they went to like one of those escape rooms several weeks after that. So just like creating opportunities to build culture, to build relationships, to get to know each other outside of the work environment can all really help with that line between like, I'm at work, I have to do all of this stuff, and not neglecting the personal aspect of it.
Mm-hmm.
If I could add, partnering with organizations like ours to provide your organization with training on mental health wellness and more of these conversations being started across our communities, I think will help to create a culture that cares in your organization. I think we can start with a conversation like this today.
It's good stuff. Very good stuff. Great questions. And again, I'm hearing a lot about community and not just building the community personally, you know, whether it's friends or family, but also building that community within our workforces. And I think especially, you know, for those first responders, people that are in the front line, social workers, therapists, again, the helping professions. So wonderful, wonderful discussions. Any last minute questions? I don't see any other questions. Any on Zoom? We're good? Okay. Well, that brings us to the end of our day today. I just want to say thank you on behalf of Kristi House. Thank you for coming. Thank you, speakers. It's been just, again, just a great day. And then before you all leave, we do have just a brief feedback survey, if you will. Go ahead and you can scan the QR code with your phone. Those of you on Zoom, do we have a link? You don't have a link? We have a QR code, though. You can scan the QR code.
It's on the power.
It's on the PowerPoint. So we can drop in a link in the chat as well. And yeah, let us know, you know, what you thought today, any ideas for the next time we do this. We'd love to hear from you and receive that feedback. Is that it? Did I cover everything?
The certificate.
Oh, yes. You will be receiving a certificate for participating today. We will send those out via email within the next week, I will say. And we will also add a file with all of the PowerPoints that you saw today in a PDF format. That way you have it with you. We also recorded this whole event. So hopefully we would be able to get that up on our website so that I know that some people maybe could only make the afternoon session or just the morning session. You'll have that for your view as well. But again, thank you so much.